We've been talking about poverty, but we haven't talked about what poverty is. So you've got your first challenge. You're going to be using this easel paper, and it looks blank now, but it's not going to look blank soon. So what I'm going to ask you to do to start with, we're going to make 2 circles in the middle. A smaller circle, like about yo big, and then a circle around it. So an inner circle and an outer circle. All right, so make 2 circles. The first circle should be bigger than a fist. So make a circle. That's a good one. A circle, and then an outer circle. Make 2 circles. 2 circles. What I'd like you to do is this. You can use either your inner circle or your outer circle for your first task, not knowing what your second task is. That's just the way it is, right? So here's one task. With your group, I'm going to ask you to come up with a definition of poverty in 10 words or less and include an image. You can do it in the outer circle or the inner circle, but not both circles. Everybody go with that? All right. Here's what I was finding when I was looking, is that poverty defies a simple explanation. I think y'all did an amazing job. But when you think of it, it's difficult, because we don't even have a common benchmark as a country. So the official poverty measure, in use for a little more than 50 years, has its roots in a 62-year-old U.S. Department of Agriculture food consumption survey. A little dated, perhaps. The survey determined a subsistence diet and budget. And then the official poverty measure takes off this. Now, I was trying to figure out the easiest way to explain what I'm still figuring out. So see if you can follow this next thing, because this is not my area of forte, like economic breakdowns. This is not my thing. So the factor that the Department of Agriculture doesn't put in is the cost of living. All right? So when you factor in the cost, if you don't factor in the cost of living, California is not the highest in poverty. But this is California. So if you don't include the cost of living, I don't know what we're talking about. So here's an example. Okay, in July, this is recent, last year, the average monthly income for a 2-bedroom apartment in Albuquerque, New Mexico was $963. And in Los Angeles, a similar apartment is $2,900. So, okay, so clearly the cost of matters, especially for the poor. And then there was another way to look at it that helped me more, or also. Here's a practical example. The average annual wage for food preparers and servers, people who work in the restaurants that we all eat at, was $27,380 in California. That's annual wage. People living on less than $30,000, and that's $3,100 above the poverty line. So that person at $27,000 is not in poverty, unless you then factor in the cost of living, because California is 13% higher. So if you put that into play, then the same person here now earns $24,000 a year. And so they're living in poverty for a family of 4. What was that? 2 p.m. Okay. All right. Does that help? That makes more sense? So we can't just look at the Office of Agriculture. It just doesn't make sense in our modern life, because this is part of the big issue. So what can we do? Service learning, yay! So we're going to play around with some service learning constructs to see what we can do. All right. So in your packet, the first page has this diagram on it. And it looks at service learning as a dynamic. So it starts with investigation. And we're going to do more of that now. We're going to do a little more investigating in a few different ways that will be much more engaging than me talking, because I think we've got a foundation now. So when we investigate, we identify some more specificity about the need, because we can't solve poverty. Am I right? But we break it down to what we can do something about. Right. As soon as students find the need and have authenticated it, where do they want to go next? Action. They want to go right to action, because everybody wants to go to action. We have to say no. And actually, I like to say no, 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 no. You have to say it a lot of times. Because what do you have to do before you jump into action? You have to do what? You have to prepare and plan. You have to know more of what you're doing. because otherwise you could just stumble and fall and make something worse. We can make something worse. So it's imperative that we do this. And that brings our curriculum into play, because our curriculum needs to be in this. This is not separate from the curriculum at all. I showed you that example from North Carolina where they were studying equity, you know, and they were looking at satire. They were still meeting their curriculum, but they were using this as a lens. So this can be robust, dynamic curriculum, but we're looking at this lens. Okay, along the way you've got reflection, and then we do summative reflection, and we tell the story. Okay, so this is what I'm going to ask you to do. You have one circle that has your definition. Now we're going to play with the other circle. I mean, everybody needs a marker in their hand because we're going to have 1 minute to all write simultaneously. So you're all going to have somehow to kind of dive in and squeeze it on your page. In the space that you have, the extra space, what I'd like you to do is I would like you to put in there all the different things related to poverty that are the issues, the sub-issues. Like we talked about literacy, but be even more specific. Kids not having books in their homes. I want you to break down poverty into all the little things that add up to poverty. Is everybody good with that? So there's no right or wrong answers here. So any idea, put it down. We work simultaneously, so we collectively fill or put, some of you have very big donuts. You don't have to work at filling it, but you want to populate that space with the issues that really matter to you. What are the breakdown of the issues that relate to poverty when you think about it? I'm going to give you an example because this might be interesting. I was in Charleston, South Carolina. We were doing some big event there, and I went to see this building in a very poor community in Charleston. Some foundation organization had set up a house that was about the size of this space. It was a house to show people how they can make more energy efficient decisions in their own homes and reduce their energy bill like by 80%. Isn't that cool? That's an energy poverty thing. So I want you to be able to think just real wide and broad as you're looking at possibilities. And look at the SDG goals if you need to again. Really think, look at those, think about it, and now populate. You're going to have 1 minute, one whole minute, to populate that space with all the ideas that come to mind when you think of poverty. All the issues, the sub-issues. Break it down. Go for it. Pick one topic you want to explore further as a table, as a group, to go deeper with. What we're going to do next is we're going to develop questions on the topics. And if you do hear another topic, you're welcome to give them a question. We want to make sure you have questions for your own table especially. When I did 4 corners, I had a lot of mobility with questions. Today I'm switching it up a little bit. But if you hear a topic that gets you and you have a question, you can give it to them. We're going to do questions on Post-its. Listen to the groups. What was your topic here? Nutrition. And this one is?
Access to affordable, healthy food.
Right. So you've got nutrition, and then they're similar but different. This is access, and this is just knowing about nutrition. You can look at it different ways. So this is the food side of the room. The center of the room is childcare. Huge issue. You can't go back to school nights, or you can't do things if you don't have so much restrictions based on childcare. Or some people leave their child alone, so that childcare is huge. And this table?
Government priorities.
And politics. Getting kids involved in it. And I just want to remind everyone, because Sonia Levitin, a wonderful author based in LA, came to speak to one of our groups several years ago. And she wrote the book, Dream Freedom. It's probably out of print, but if you don't have it, find it, Dream Freedom. And it's a book that tells the real story, it's a novel, of kids in Boulder, Colorado, who learned about slavery in the Sudan by accident. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. They learned about it. They got so upset about it. They were 5th graders, and they were the ones who spoke before Congress in D.C. and got Bill Clinton's attention. And that's when he started getting involved. So if you don't think little kids or older kids can rattle people's cage, a lot of the things I read in that article today made me think, gosh, if kids did a whole thing about that politically, we would get more press and more attention. So kids and politics is a great mix. This table,
Systemic inequality.
Systemic inequality. So we've got some root issues here. So we've got some immediate responses and root issues. That's why I like the variety. This table, restricted social services, and they're going to get more restricted. I don't know if you heard, Kentucky is the first state in the United States that now says you have to work in order to get some welfare or foods. So there's going to be some big stuff hitting the fans soon about restricted social services. And if you're afraid ICE is going to come down knocking on your door, that's another issue about restricted social services, a big issue. This table.
We were talking about transportation.
Transportation, right?
Which is also connected to, I was just thinking about this, if the cost of living in the city is so high, and then you have to move like way somewhere else, it becomes increasingly hard to get to the job.
Right, and the more limited jobs in some of the suburbs, or some of the areas that may be more affordable, they don't have some of the work. So man, it's difficult. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. You post-its on your table. Everybody at your table, I'd like you to write at least 2 questions about your topic for your table. Take 2 minutes and get to know your questions as a table. So let's just pause for a moment because we are educators. What have we done so far in this paper? What's happened in the room so far? What's happened in the room? What have you been doing? Yes?
We defined the issue. We flushed it out a little bit with more detailed aspects of it, and now we're asking questions how to solve.
Is that a method anybody could use in their classroom? On a variety of topics, right? How many people were involved as we were doing these parts? Okay. This is one of my new things this year, this academic year, is in some classrooms you go in and there's like 60% of the kids are involved, am I right? Sometimes there's 40, sometimes there's 80. What's the percentage that you're okay with? 100. So my new line is 100% of participation 100% of the time. And unless I create that opportunity to happen in the room, it's not okay. It's my job is to create so far we've come in, I had you up doing that little game. That was 100%, right? So far we've done several different things, and each time what percentage was involved? 100%. So we have to look at what strategies and engagements can we do that make sure every student's involved. And if they're not, then we can find out what their learning style is and find a way to accommodate that. 100% of the time. Anything else that happened so far as we did what we've done so far? Anything else that you noticed about it? Yeah.
I'm kind of feeling a sense of like camaraderie with this group and kind of wanting to solve this problem. So I mean, so kind of learning what they learn and they change their groups, so it's kind of helped us cope.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Yes?
We started with a symbol in the center and one word about target for submission or something concrete.
Yes?
I like how it helps me to focus in step by step by step, because sometimes it seems overwhelming, or I'm just, like my brain's everywhere, but just slowly, kind of organically helps me focus in on it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was going to say as well, is that it's a very complex issue, but it sort of allows you to focus in on one area that you can take action, because there's way too many things to really try and tackle at once, but it kind of gives you one focus point.
Well, yes.
There wasn't just one right answer, which meant that everybody could say something without the fear of failure.
Okay, this is my second thing I'm working on this year. So the first 100% participation 100% of the time. And the other is to create environments, learning environments, that removes as much judgment as possible. Now, we know that kids can learn while they're being judged because that's the norm, am I right? Do they think they're being judged most of the time?
Yeah.
So my job, again, is to do as much as I can to remove all elements of judgment, so that, because I believe strongly, emphatically, that our brain works better and makes better connections when we're not struggling with this layer of judgment on top of what we're supposed to be doing. So, yeah.
I just wanted to express that it's very empowering. Like, I
feel like, you know, even doing this in a classroom, to see it this way, and as other people said, to bring it to focus, it becomes like, you know, palatable, it becomes like something that you can do, and it's extremely empowering.
Right. Now, in your materials, you don't have to look now, I have a full description of the Four Corners experience that this is adapted from. What we're going to do now is we're going to classify the questions, because many of you have heard me say that very often kids think that research to answer questions is done by what? Google. But no one ever calls Google a research engine, they call it what kind of engine? Search. So there's a quote from the 30s that says if you copy from one person, it's plagiarism. If you copy from two, it's research. All right. So those of you who know my work know that there's 4 kinds of what I call action research. It's the MISO method. You're going to put one method in each of the quadrants you create. It doesn't matter the size. So who can tell me the one that starts with the letter M? Yes?
Media.
Media. So write media in one of the quadrants. In a moment, you're going to put the questions that are best answered by media. But we don't live by media alone. Maps is a good form of media. Just think of that, because sometimes we think of just internet but maps. We need maps when we study poverty.
Podcasts and TED Talks, it's all media.
Yeah, all media. Anything, billboards is media, right? I is for what? Interview. So you interview an expert, someone who's got a level of expertise. So in one of the quadrants, write the word interview. Whereas S is conduct a what?
Survey.
And I'm here to tell you, I have a team of consultants working with me in New York City on a big project, and 2 of them just created some great information on how to teach kids how to make great surveys. Anybody want a copy of that stuff?
Yes.
We'll send it out. I'm so excited. You get to play with it, and it's still in beta. It's really good. We tested it yesterday with some kids in New York City, and boy, it helped them understand how to make a Likert scale. I mean, like, yeah. So it's long overdue for me, so I'm really appreciative. Maureen and John did that. So we've got interview, survey, and the 4th one is, for observation. So now you're going to just have 2 minutes. Divide the questions up. Don't just take your own. Start placing the questions in the quadrant where you think it's best answered.
So it might work.
Does anyone have a question about what one of these 4 things are? Media could be what? What could media be? Internet, what else? News, documentaries, books, articles, TED Talks, YouTube, maps, brochures, a radio, all those things. Whereas interview, you interview someone with expertise. Donna put together a very good list of organizations in your packet, and contacting people that you can interview is really great. An expert. There's ways to prepare kids for all these things. You don't just want to throw them at it. You need to prepare them in all these. Surveys, when you want to get a landscape of things, kind of like we want to survey all the food banks in LA County and see what their main lack of nutrition might be, right? Okay, and then observations, what can we see? I was just someone asked me to give an example, and I'll give an example. They're looking at systemic inequalities. So let's say if I go to a movie theater in diverse Los Angeles and everybody in that theater is one color, what might that make me think about? Who has access? Where a movie theater is located? Is there a transportation issue? Are there cost issues? Do you know what I mean? So you can observe in so many different ways and say, what does that mean? What am I looking for? What am I looking at? You can send kids out to become observant. You know, on your way home from school, look out the window rather than look at a device and see what you notice, how many social service agencies are between our school and your home. So observation is critical.